collaboration panel. We're going to discuss the power of collaboration as well as the collaboration thesis: how, when, with whom, and what leads to a successful collaboration. And remember, at any time you have questions, feel free to type them in that Q&A chat box. Also, we're going to talk more about networking opportunities as well. So let's bring back So-Koo.
All right. First, it's my honor to be here with this group. I mean, this is probably one of the most prestigious groups that I've ever been together in a panel. So thanks so much for joining us. So I'm going to just simply go around and so that each panelist can introduce themselves. So the first on my left, Josh Aviv, CEO of SparkCharge. Go ahead, briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Aviv. I'm the founder and CEO of SparkCharge. At SparkCharge, we're creating the world's first mobile, intelligent, and on-demand EV charging platform, allowing electric vehicle owners to have range sent to their car with the push of a button via our mobile app currently. We were just named Top 100 Business Innovators today by Business Insider. We're excited to be part of the LG Nova program, where we're creating a very innovative EV charger meant to enable accessibility to everyone.
All right, great. Next, Bonin Bog, Chief Growth Officer at Triller and founder of Lockstep Ventures.
Sure thing. Hello, San Francisco. How are you? You good? Yeah, come on. We're like, I think we stand between you and the bar. I saw them setting up. So yeah, Chief Growth Officer of Triller, but co-founder of Lockstep. And at Lockstep, we really focus on tackling systemic problems by creating truly economic viable solutions and investing in companies that are tackling those areas around financial literacy, criminal justice reform, education reform, and healthcare outcomes. And we're excited to be here. And,
all right.
Thank you.
Great. Welcome aboard. Rachel Clemmer, Rachel Chambers, Managing Director at Alchemist X.
Thank you very much. Alchemist, just like the name, we're an accelerator. We take early stage startup companies and we run them through a design thinking and lean startup program to get them to funding. We work on all kinds of companies that sell to businesses. I run the Alchemist X unit, which works with large corporations and governments to accelerate startups in their industry. And I feel lucky to be working on the hardest problems in the world. We live in a world of wicked problems. The lean startup and design thinking techniques we get from the scientific method are some of the most powerful approaches we have to tackle those hard problems. So it gets me up in the morning.
It's great. All right, good to have you. Next panelist is Courtney Horn, and she has one of the most amazing titles I ever seen. She has the title of a storyteller at X, the moonshot company of Alphabet.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Courtney Hone, storyteller for Moonshots at X, which you might know originally as Google X, the home of the Google self-driving car, Loon Internet Balloons, the infamous Google Glass, which I rode up and down and up and down. So my role is a combination of internally trying to find the right mix of culture and process that helps entrepreneurs resist the gravitational pull back toward normal and ordinary, and instead stay in a place of radical creativity and adventurousness. And then externally, my role is to explain what the heck a moonshot factory is. Like all of us on the panel, we're going after the world's hardest problems with radical technology. And an important part of that is attracting the right partners to collaborate with us on the always unsteady path of innovation, and just as importantly, to repel the wrong partners, which is maybe a topic we could get into later. So wonderful to be here.
Great, thanks, Courtney. Next panelist, Ali Merchant, CEO and founder of IQ3 Connect. Please.
Thanks, So-Koo. So my name is Ali Merchant. I'm the CEO of IQ3 Connect. We are based in Boston, Massachusetts. And we help industrial enterprises become virtual first sustainable companies. And we've built a web-based platform that helps industrial product companies take their physical complex things and make them virtual and sustainable and very efficient. And so in essence, you can say that we are building the very fabric of an industrial or enterprise metaverse. And we are the recent winner of the Mass Challenge Platinum 50K Award. We've just received that a couple of weeks ago, and we are super excited and very honored to be here as part of the LG Nova Proto Challenge winners.
Congratulations,
Thank
Ali,
you.
for winning the Mass Challenge. By the way, I'm from Boston originally, And Mass Challenge, although I'm running my own challenge program, that is one of the most prestigious challenge programs in the United States and probably in the world.
Thank you.
Right, congratulations. So let me ask first question. Maybe Ali, since we introduced it this way, you're going to be the first one to answer this question. So, what is how should a big corporation like LG Electronics or even Google work with the startups? I mean, there are so many different models out there, of course. But what would be, from startups' perspective, what would you want to see, and what do you think is the best way to do it?
Great question, a very tough question that needs a lot of thought. I think it's a multi-dimensional optimization problem. So
you are an engineer, by the way, right?
I am. And having just gone through the accelerator, we've seen some of the things that work for startups and some of the things that don't work. And I think accelerators are fantastic, but where corporates can work closely with startups, like we're doing with the LG Nova team, I think is a very unique model, let me say that. And so far, I think it's a trendsetter because we've interacted with other corporate programs. We have customers in the space that treat us like vendors, and they don't, we're just another vendor. And so I think there are lots of different ways to do this, but I think LG Nova is fairly unique in the way it is approaching it. And I also appreciate the fact that Sogu knows what it is like to build a startup and go through that process. So that's really important. And the other thing is, I think LG Nova has brought us very close to the decision makers. Many times there's this huge lag in startups and corporates where you're kind of stuck in this Byzantine mess somewhere, and you're almost lost. And you know that there is an opportunity, but it's very hard to kind of thread that needle. So that's my view right now. Hopefully, some of these pieces do make sense from a startup perspective.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Courtney, you are one of the largest companies. You work for one of the largest companies in the world, and so you are definitely a corporation. So I'm sure you work with a lot of startups, and there are a lot of different ways to work startups. So please.
So we exist in a very protected space within Alphabet. So we were actually X was Larry and Sergey's attempt to make sure that Google, as it grew, could stay really innovative. So X was set up in 2010 very deliberately to work on problems that were apart from Google's kind of core internet problems. So this is how this may translate to entrepreneurs is really about the importance of finding the protected space within a larger organization where the culture of innovation is best understood. So I ended up coining a term, version 0.crap. And the reason I coined this term, it was when I was still working inside Big Google. I was always working out on the fringes and part of these teams that were just kind of going into the jungle to figure out kind of the newest products. And when I would come into contact with the more, well, I guess the larger and say scaled parts of Google, there was even at Google, there was a bit of a cultural friction. And I had to find ways to signal to some of these people, look, this is just an experiment. We're just trying something out. Don't arrive with all of your McKinsey people and your analytics and try to predict whether this is going to work or not. We need to kind of come together and try to figure this out. And so I think for entrepreneurs to figure out where inside a larger corporation there are kind of subcultures that can kind of journey with you while you're still learning and still figuring things out and make you feel safe bringing your prototype, which is version 0.crap. That's really important. And even our teams, right? Teams with the Alphabet and X backing behind them, even our entrepreneurs at X get nervous sometimes when they go to their partners. So we have a project in the computational agriculture space called Mineral, and they're building these rovers to go into fields of strawberries and soybeans and kind of use ML to evaluate how quickly the fruits are growing. And it's very early and experimental. And they showed up to one of their partners, one of the world's largest food companies, you would know their name, And the device that this vaunted team from X and Alphabet showed up with was some bicycle wheels and some duct tape and pieces hanging out all over it. And that team was terrified to show up and say, oh, this is who you're partnering with? This is what the future of innovation at Alphabet looks like? Well, yes, it is. That was their version 0.crap. I'll have to bring the picture. But having that bravery to look until you find those right APIs into an organization, that's really, really important.
Awesome. This is great perspective. Rachel, so you also have a unique perspective because you are part of a incubator accelerator. So what do you think?
Yeah, I'm stuck right in the middle between the startups on the one hand and the corporates on the other. And I love Steve Blank's quote that a startup is not a small version of a large corporation, and a large corporation is not a grown-up version of a startup. They're different organizations that exist to do different things. A startup is a temporary organization in search of a sustainable business model. A corporation has a business model, and it's interested in protecting it. So it has a much shorter time horizon and a much lower risk tolerance. And that's why the engineers in Google X feel unsafe, because they have a long time horizon and a high risk tolerance inside an organization which is judging by some different rules. So accelerators and all of the folks working in corporation and at this interface were impedance matches between two entities that are moving at completely different speeds with completely different appetites for risk. And your question is a very good one, and the answer is very hard, so I'm going to answer the reverse question, which is what are some of the anti-patterns for working like that? Corporations can waste startups' time and just be giant vampires sucking the young blood out of early-stage startups. Corporations can set up research labs that never release anything into the world and that let young bucks like Steve Jobs come in and steal the idea for the desktop interface and the mouse and make their fortune off it. So there's lots and lots of anti-patterns. I love reading the history of corporate innovation. It's littered with corpses, and they're all object lessons for how not to do it. The answers to how to do it are much harder. It's about finding those areas of alignment where you can agree on a timeline and agree on a risk tolerance, which is slightly uncomfortable but acceptable to both parties. That takes a lot of negotiation and a lot of conversation. But luckily, both sides have a model for those conversations, and it's sales. You have to sell each other on the partnership.
That's a great perspective. So, Bonin, as an investor, so you probably have even another perspective about the collaboration between corporate and also startups. What is your perspective?
Well, it's interesting because in 2008, I launched, when I was on the corporate side, I launched PepsiCo 10, which was kind of one of the early startups meet brands. And we did that for 4.5 years, I think maybe 15 classes. When I look back on it, it was a colossal failure. But the good news about big corporations is even if you get it wrong, you keep trying to get it right. But no, I shouldn't say that. It had a lot of impact culturally on the organization, but I learned exactly that. You can't suck their time. You have to have guaranteed investment. And you also, I think the most important thing that you said, and I'm going to kind of say it a little differently, is you have to incentivize the people inside the organization. It has to mean something to be a part of this. And so when I relaunched at Mondelez, which used to be Kraft Foods, I called it Mobile Futures. And first of all, the slogan was the future in 90 days. So we had 90 days to bring to life, which is slow for a startup, really fast for, a large snack food company. We had guaranteed investment. And most importantly, those were the people who were put on a fast track to move through the organization. And so it was incentivized from a career perspective. So I learned that, and I think that, Soju, I don't envy you. You are on a journey that is very difficult, so good luck. I still have scars.
You're already scaring me, man.
We did Australia, China, India. So I've seen this around the world. On the other side, as an investor, if the company is getting it right, I like it. Because the thing that I think startups don't really think about is that beyond just getting a contract, the ability for a large organization to take something small and scale, if they can get the right fit, is unparalleled. So the pace and the speed at which you can unlock growth is huge. And so as an investor, if that is working, I'm in all the time. We used to talk about it, moving from unicorns to dragons. Like, yes, you can create $1 billion business, but that's kind of like par for the course for LG. But can we create something that's even bigger than that, faster than that? Can we create dragons if we can get that mixed to work together? So as an investor, that's kind of my point of view, is that I like it, but it has to be working right.
And your point about committed budget is absolutely essential. Right. You've got to have line of business committing actual cash to the enterprise because it's the only language they understand.
Right. Exactly. If it doesn't mean anything to their bottom line, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, just become a PR stunt, and
Right.
you just become saying things, and you really need to put money where your mouth is.
Right.
That's really what it is. So, Josh, next Dragon.
Hope so.
Yeah. So, what do you think that what do you think about the collaboration between corporates and startups?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that startups really need to be prepared and really understand what it means to work with a corporate. I think a lot of startups see the glitz and the glamour of, oh my gosh, I can work with a giant corporation, and they get really excited about the press release. But I think really when you think about it, and this has kind of already been touched on, they're two different beings, right? Even at SparkCharge when we joined the LG Nova experience, we wanted to go, right? I think even when we were meeting with Ali, we were like, all right, hey, we've got the design drawn up in like the next 6 hours, and we'll prototype it in the next 5, right? Like we were ready to go. And I think a lot of startups need to like realize that, corporations, they move at a different pace, but they're a lot more methodical than a startup, right? There's a lot more thought that goes into every decision, and that can be a great thing for a startup to learn and embody. And so when we think about the LG Nova experience that we've gotten here today, we've really learned the insides of LG and understanding how things work and how a startup can incorporate those things not only to get better, but in some ways to move faster. And that's really exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, so it sounds like I'm good to hear that so far the experience has been fairly positive. At least I heard it that way,
Yes.
so that's great. This question to Ali and Josh. So you guys are really running a startup. You are the startup. So what do you want to see from startups' perspective, the corporations like us to either provide or offer, or how does a corporate like us, or even like Google, Alphabet, to work with you?
Yeah, want me to go?
Go ahead.
All right, yeah. So I think it's a very clear and defined roadmap of what your expectations are out of the partnership and what the expectations are from us, right? And then obviously cash. So that's a big one. You need cash.
The one, yeah.
But I think the expectation is, hey, we're going into this partnership together. What are your expectations? What do you want from us? What do you see that's special in us that we can leverage to help grow each business? And I think that's one of the things that LG Nova did a good job of, is making it very clear, this isn't a competition. This is a way for LG to get better. This is a way for your startup to get better, and we're going to do it together. And so I think that was one of the clear things that a lot more corporates can use, is making sure there's a clear and defined roadmap into how each company benefits from the partnership.
Absolutely, and I want to pick up one really important point there. When I had my own startup, the most painful thing was not exactly the length of the involvement. I mean, a lot of times we say, well, startups want to go and corporates takes forever to do anything. What really killed me was the uncertainty or unpredictability of the timeline. Even if it is a year from now, if I knew the decision was going to be made in a year or something would happen in a year, I can do it. I can wait, I can raise money, and I can go with it. It's just that sometimes you get involved with the corporate, it drags it out forever without knowing what's going to be. And that was the most difficult thing for me.
Yeah.
And that's, as you can see, that was the reason I put the clear timeline here, because at least you know what it takes.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and I think that you hit the two key ingredients, right? One is that clarity between the startup and the corporate, the timeline and the dollars, right? Those are the three key. I said two, but I think there are three key ingredients that are in this program that I see that really gets us excited, as compared to some of the other programs that we've been in before.
The only other piece of advice that I would throw out there is on the startup side, because I agree with you, cash is king and one of the most important parts. But what people don't realize is there's so many pieces of an organization the size of LG that could potentially be beneficial to a startup. And I don't think startups sometimes take enough time to understand the organization in its totality and ask for things that are beyond just cash, whether it's go to market with my sales team, whether it's procurement, purchasing of food. I mean, there's just, the scale of these organizations are so big that there's other pieces to unlock that a lot of times startups don't necessarily take into account or ask for.
Right, but I think that just having these three ingredients in place will allow us to engage, and then I think that process of learning and getting to know each other will then expand into that growing relationship, which will have that multiplier effect. But I think that many times you're stuck because you don't get the money or you don't get enough money to really get that momentum with the corporate, right? So then you can't get to that next stage of really understanding and getting engaged in a really meaningful way.
And this is not a black art. I mean, we have techniques for stakeholder mapping and for performing customer discovery within large corporations. But I think you're right. It's some of the most valuable work that I teach our startups is you've got to understand the structure of the organization. You've got to know the org chart, and you've got to know the unofficial org chart as well, because there's always a shadow power structure behind the public one.
So it's a clearly defined process. I think that's what Ali is implying. Once you know the timeline, once you know what you are getting out of it, if you obviously you either win or get to the end of the process, then you can decide whether you want to jump onto it or not. I mean, that was probably the most important thing when I designed the process, and I think I appreciate that you guys are pointing that out. So Courtney, you obviously involve in collaborations with a lot of startups and so on. How does Google X or Alphabet X Moonshot Factory is dealing with these potential issues? I'm not saying that those are issues that startups have a certain expectations of a short timeline and all those things. I'm sure you deal with it every day.
So we're in a sort of hybrid of all the other situations on the panel. So we are a home, the Moonshot Factory is a home to a number of startups that are working on kind of 5 to 10 year time horizons. So most often we're out doing partnerships with big organizations. So Mineral, the computational ag company, working with other huge ag companies out there.
You should join the challenge, by the way.
Yeah.
No, seriously. If you have a great project, then why not? You are a startup.
But that's what's so interesting is that even that our entrepreneurs inside X with the backing of Alphabet find themselves trying to figure out the right model of collaboration. So we have this, ironically, have some of the same challenges as you guys do. But this is an area where we spend a lot of creativity. So it's not just the engineering work that, say, X or Alphabet is known for. It's trying to bring that commercial creativity. And one of my favorite recent examples is a project we have called Tapestry. So this is a moonshot for virtualizing the electric grid. So we all know the grid is breaking in many ways, and it's going to be more important rather than less, and needs to be more resilient with climate change. And so our project lead, Audrey Zabelman, is a 30-plus year veteran of the energy industry, and she has an amazing team of software engineers working with her, as you would imagine, at X, at Alphabet. But what she's really brought to the project is a creative approach where she's signing up grid operators and energy leaders around the globe to kind of co-build and co-create with us. And so she's flipping this model where the Silicon Valley geniuses go in a back room and make their little black box and then sell it to the world for millions or billions of dollars. And she's saying right up front, sure, there's some technology we've started, we have the proofs of concept, we've been partnering, but she has signed up Chile and a organization in South Africa and an organization in New Zealand and others where she's got this chessboard around the world where it's going to be a collaboration to figure this out, because Alphabet has a lot of money, but the electric grid is the largest machine on the planet. And so trying to kind of bring that commercial creativity is really important.
That's great. So we talked about a lot of things about the collaboration and method and collaboration, but I'm sure some of you have some examples that you saw, that really worked out very well, or some you saw it didn't work out very well. I'd like to hear from you. Any of you can have some examples of what worked out. I mean, yeah, if you have no example that worked out well, then you can talk about worked out example that did not work out. But what are the examples that you saw so far that really worked out between startups and corporations?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I think one of the best things was being assigned an EIR to kind of be our guiding light through the corporation. So for us, it was Ali back there who did a great job, not only guiding us through how LG worked, but understanding this is what LG wants out of you, right? And being able to have access to him and the resources almost 24/7. I'd say, and that really boils down to, if you said, well, sum that all up in one word, it's communication, right? I've been on a video call where we've been going back and forth over, well, how does this business model play in, and how does this design, and what are the features? We've been on calls until like midnight going over, a presentation.
Seriously?
Yeah, we've been going over a presentation and learning from him. Okay, look, this is what you as a startup are trying to say. This is how a corporation works, right? Now let's marry the two together and create a rock star presentation so that what you're trying to convey and what the corporation wants gets put together into one giant presentation and understanding. And so I think one of the best things that I've seen, and we've been a part of a lot of accelerators, a lot of incubators, everything from Techstars to Plug and Play. This was the first one where from day one we were assigned a mentor, we were assigned an EIR, and I think that's made a lot of difference.
Oh,
I absolutely. I second and third that. And again, our EIRs were just absolutely invaluable, and our collaboration with them has already been very successful, regardless of, the future. And I think that is, you asked for other examples, and I think that where we've been successful, we've been able to find that the equivalent of an EIR at the corporate that becomes our guide, a champion, and then takes our technology and then kind of helps us to get that into the business units, get that into a wider exposure into the organization. So again, I think that is a really important thing that we've already experienced with LG Nova, and even with other companies where we have been successful. Yeah.
All right. So Rachel, obviously you see many, many examples. So probably you want to give us a few, not just one, of examples what worked. Maybe you can also give us examples that did not work very well. And you can tell us why it didn't work very well.
Yeah, you bet. So when startups do this very well, they tend to become very large companies. So my favorite company in the world is LaunchDarkly. It's the best outcome from Alchemist so far. It was founded by my friend Edith Harbour. She had been working in a lot of big outscale websites, feature flagging and figuring out how to tag different features in the software so that you could turn them off and on. And what this lets you do is if somebody pushes a change to the website and it brings the whole website down, you can turn it off. So it's an instantiation of what I like to call blameless software. It makes software more compassionate, more flexible, and forgiving of human foibles. So I love that whole category. And one of the consequences of the way the software is designed, which is a reflection of Edith's character, is that it saved people's jobs. If you made a mistake, you could roll it back, and it didn't cause disastrous effects across the whole business. So what you see is the software itself creates champions in the corporations, and those champions become very successful at their jobs because they have this powerful tool that ameliorates the effects of their making a mistake. They go on and get promoted and go and work at other companies, and they take the software with them as they go. So you see that pattern with software like VMware, with software like Splunk. I'm an investor in a company called Honeycomb, which is sort of a younger sibling of LaunchDarkly, which is going to have, I hope, similar capacity and ramifications. So those are some of the success stories. And it's because the software is really necessary, and it makes people better at their jobs, and it gives them the next 5 years of their career. The anti-pattern of that from the startup's point of view is exactly as Courtney was describing, the technocrats parachuting into a domain in which they know nothing, like the electrical grid, and saying, I have a box here, it's going to solve all of your problems. And I was lucky enough to be VP of marketing for one of these software companies where the founder had a previous success. She had gone and talked to academics all over the country, and she had this great theory for how she was going to revolutionize her particular sector, which was a very specific sector with very precise demands about domain knowledge on the part of the buyer. We spent $5 million building a product that no one wanted. We sold absolutely no seats to this software.
Must be really painful.
We flew that plane into a mountain and left a smoking crater. It was one of the biggest learning experiences of my career, but it gave me a holy horror of the technocratic company with no domain expertise. So I can't do more than cheer from the sidelines at your researcher's approach.
All right. Well, that's an amazing story. Bonin, you probably have seen some examples and stories of startups and failing or succeeding with the corporations.
Yeah, I think through both PepsiCo 10 and Mobile Futures, maybe 200 startups had come through. I think I've seen 200 startups. But I think these guys can share failures, and there's a ton of failures, colossal failures. There's, and then there were big successes. I think for me, what was the most interesting, which I think I am excited for your guys' journey, is the most successful for me was the cultural change that we made as an organization. So we were able to take what would be considered a risk averse. The funny thing is, most big organizations are not as risk averse as we say, because the walls of these organizations are littered with failures. Product X that was made, that Oreo cookie with bubble gum didn't work out. So there is a lot of risk, but we don't tend to take it in areas where we feel safe, and those tend to be the areas where we can unlock the most amount of growth. So for me, when I made it to Mondelez, and we were doing it at Mondelez, I really wanted to understand the cultural impact. And so I had BCG do a bunch of work. And it was interesting. When we first set out, 80% of people said that they knew that new and emerging technologies could change their business. 80% of people said that they don't believe the organization invested enough in it, and 60% said that they themselves didn't invest in it. And when we came out of the journey of that first class of Mobile Futures, those numbers completely flipped. So everybody believed that for the first time ever as an organization, we were investing in it. But most importantly, the individuals believed that they could take their own time and invest in it because they knew it would change how they, so we didn't necessarily just have to have an operationalized process. They were actually going out and now sourcing ideas from emerging partners that they would never. And I think that cultural change in Mondelez and ultimately led to Snacking Futures, which is the investment group that they now have that buys kind of emerging products and tech together. I think that fundamentally changed how the organization looked at going to market and emerging technology. And so to me, that was the biggest success that I think that I've seen in it.
So let's stay with the cultural aspect a little bit, because I think there's a big gap between corporations, big corporations' culture and startups' culture, and I can speak for them myself. But I suspect there may be certain cultural elements in a corporation that is more embracing for its cultures like startups, for example, or not maybe. So do you guys think there's any cultural aspect that make it more easier for corporations to work with the startups, or vice versa?
People ping pong back and forth over their careers. I think I'm pretty typical like you in that I've worked at early stage startups, I've worked at large corporations. So it's not that a corporation is a monolith ever. I tend to think of the big five personality traits, and particularly openness, as the spectrum along which people choose their career. And so people who are sky high in openness like me end up doing tons of early stage stuff because we're super ADHD and shiny and we can't concentrate for long. And people who have, executive abilities and can work on one thing for a year at a time, which is a black art to me, really thrive at corporations. But we all fall somewhere along that spectrum, and I think it really benefits individuals to work at both. I think there are always people in large corporations who are incredibly entrepreneurial, who are there because for whatever other reason, they're risk averse. Maybe they're a caregiver to an elderly parent, maybe they're raising children. And so one of the things we find really effective in our practice is to find those very entrepreneurial people embedded in large corporations and build the alliance there, because those people can be translators between the startup and the culture of the corporation.
It's funny because that first class at Mondelez, there were 9 people, and every single one of the people, so we also had to have them, they had to go work for the startup for a week. So they had to leave their day job and actually work for the startup so they could learn the culture. Every single one of them came back from those immersion days and they all said, Bonin, should we quit and go work at a startup? I said, no, because there are 9 top marketers quit. I'll be fired. I need this gig, guys. We need to focus. I said, the most important thing, though, is think about the lessons that you learned and how you can apply them inside of our organization with established brands, scale, dollars, and investment. And again, I think it goes back to your point, and we were calling them entrepreneurs at that time, finding those folks and giving them a home, because failure is a thing, right? It's hard to fail in a large organization because, to your point, it ruins careers. And so that's giving them a home and a space where that's okay, and showing them that the scale at which you operate in can actually drive faster. Then I think you can get a winning success, but it's hard.
You've got to be really careful though, because a big corporation will glom onto entrepreneur and go, oh right, we can build new billion-dollar businesses. It's easy, Silicon Valley does it all the time.
Right.
We'll run a program for 3 years, and if there's no billion-dollar business out of it, that was a failure. So there's a big expectation management piece. But yes, entrepreneurs exist, they should be encouraged, and they should be rewarded appropriately for the high risks they take with their careers.
And then we always use the billion-dollar number as a sort of a landmark.
It's Eileen Lee's fault.
Yeah,
She wrote that
but
unicorn
it's
article.
really, some businesses can go much bigger than $1 billion, but some business can be very successful with less number. And then it also comes down to obviously profits, and some business just takes longer to become more successful. So, I try to avoid using the number $1 billion, and especially as a number of years attached to it. That really doesn't make sense. But we also understand that corporations, they always have to look at P&L, balance sheet, and that's really what they go for. So sometimes an innovation organization like LG Nova, as part of our job to manage the expectation to some extent, but at the same time provide enough room for the startups to play in there. And I feel like sometimes I'm almost like a matchmaker in between, and or sort of like a mediator in between in some sense. But I think that's probably maybe more companies should have that kind of mediator type of, actually Google X is obviously, well, you're much more than that, but certainly you are a startup inside of a large corporation. So that I think is going to be something maybe a lot of corporations are going to need. Yeah. So I want to ask a couple of questions. I mean, this is probably going to be questions for just each of you, but for Ali and Josh, specifically, what do you want to see in the LG Nova Challenge? I already laid out the process, but if you have anything that you want to either ask or any comment or anything that you want to see more emphasized going forward in this process, what would that be? Let's start with you, Ali.
Let me.
Oh.
No, I think that it has all the ingredients, and we'll. I'm looking forward to having a productive outcome here. And I think this is it's a unique program. I mean, I've been, interacted with other corporates, and it takes time to kind of align all the pieces together. And I think that LG Nova has done a great job of bringing all that together to really accelerate that timeline, and so we don't have to wait for somebody to sign off on a budget or to get to the right people or to get in front of the decision. All those things that really stack up and frustrate startups and suck the life out of startups. I think all those things that I can see have been addressed, early on and upfront. So, congratulations.
Well, we haven't even begun yet.
I know that, but I'm saying, so far, I think our experience has been extremely positive.
All right. Josh?
Yeah, I think the thing for us is we want to see impact, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Yep.
when we think about, what are our two companies doing together, right? And the end goal of that, I think for us at SparkCharge, being a startup that's focused on impact, not only from an environmental standpoint, but also from an economical standpoint as well, I think we want to see, massive impact where we launch this, right? So when we think about it, our two companies coming together with the backing of LG, with the innovation at SparkCharge, also the innovation at LG, how big can this get, right? And for us, we really see this as an opportunity to swing for the fences, right? Both from the LG standpoint and a SparkCharge standpoint. And the products and services and programs that we create together, we really measure that by saying, well, how much of an impact did we have in our communities? How much of an impact did we have on the environment?
Absolutely.
And if we had a really big impact, if we really changed someone's life for the better, then that means that this program was a win from our standpoint. And so, to bring it home for us, it is 100% about how big of an impact we can truly have.
You are a really good speaker. You got to run for Congress. I'm just kidding.
Maybe president of
Maybe
LG.
at some point. All right. Okay, Bonin, I have a question for you. So, well, can you tell the audience more about LG Nova's collaboration with Lockstep Ventures? Now I'm more going specifically about Lockstep Ventures.
Of course.
And yes, please.
No, I was just going to say we're excited to announce that we are an inaugural partner of the investment committee.
Yep.
With
All right.
with Nova, and so we're excited. And I think for us, we've talked about SparkCharge as well, looking at investments together. I think for us, you asked the question initially, which is, as I mentioned when we kind of started this, strategics are very important, and we think that, first of all, we're very excited about the work that you're doing, and we're very excited to be a part of that. But also, we know that with the backing of you guys from a strategic perspective, that many of the companies that we can jointly go after together probably have a better chance of success. And it sounds like the model's already working, so I'm even more excited about that. And so, yes, we're excited to announce that we are an inaugural partner.
Great. Welcome to on board as Oxta Venture, part of our investors network. That's an awesome announcement. Thanks for that. And I look forward to working with you more going forward and all the great things together.
You're probably going to need a shoulder to cry on. So I'm happy to be that as well.
Are you sure about that? Because I may cry pretty often if you.
Well, not that happy. No.
All right. Okay. Rachel, you are obviously one of our partners, and we are working really closely together. Actually, part of the magic that made these things work was because we partner with incubators and accelerators like Alchemist, for example. So how do you want to work with LG Nova going forward together? And it's not just LG Nova, but also the startups that are part of the program and so on.
Well, first of all, I want to get you two to get Nova to commit to writing a case study with you on whatever project you end up doing together. Case studies are incredibly valuable collateral, the most useful thing that you can throw on somebody else's table and get the next sale. So I'd love to work with all of your startups. I love working with startups. I love helping them find the route to success. I love working with large corporations as well because, as I said at the beginning, these really are wicked problems. This interface between the large, successful companies that have a lot of money and a lot of reach and a lot of potential, and the little startup companies that have the vision and the imagination and the ingenuity, that seems to be the most impactful place we could possibly invest our energies. This is where we can light a small light and create a big sun. So in any capacity that LG Nova would like to partner with Alchemist, we're here to turn lead into gold.
Awesome. We love you guys. All right, Courtney. So we haven't officially signed any agreement with each other, but now you are on the panel.
I'm family.
Let's say, yeah, so good way to put it. So how would you, or how can you see, Google X and us potentially, I mean, said the reason big, potentially working together in the future?
Yeah, what I heard you talking about earlier was the importance of building an ecosystem. And while every one of us in the room dreams of that straight line path to the moon and success, what we all know is that there's lots of twists and turns and chutes and ladders and restarts and pivots. And and that's as true of X and Alphabet as anywhere else on the planet. And so how can we as a community of scientists and entrepreneurs and dreamers kind of all support each other and kind of recombine in interesting ways when certain things hit dead ends or need to pivot. So a wonderful example now that we can look across 10 years at X is, I look at a collection of robotics projects that Google acquired in sort of the 2012, 2013 time horizon, and they kind of wandered around Google for a while. They ended up coming over to X when Alphabet was formed, and over the last 5 years, a collection of those humans and technologies and business insights and technology insights have now formed into 2 other bets for Alphabet. So last summer we had, X graduated an other bet called Intrinsic, which is focused on industrial robotics. So that was a collection of guys who kind of came in and kind of formed and reformed and went out to partner with different manufacturers around the world to learn what those customers really wanted. They fell apart, they broke up, they got back together again, they tried all sorts of different things, and finally they became an other bet for Alphabet, which is a really big deal. And then there's a project inside of X, our most mature project called Everyday Robots, which is trying to figure out kind of general purpose robotics. But again, those kinds of, that group of humans has formed and reformed. Now, they have they have relationships and tentacles out into the broader robotics communities, but they also leaned a lot on each other inside of X. And so For those of you who don't have an X, well, now you have an LG Nova, and then across the X's and the LG Novas and the other incubators and accelerators, how can we get more in that habit of collaborating rather than purely, I know we're all competing, but I think there's something beautiful about Silicon Valley in that we can all personify, that spirit of helping each other grow and build.
Entrepreneurship is so lonely. It's so important to find your people.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I agree with you. I mean, when you are an entrepreneur, I mean, Josh and Ali, and I also know that you are lonely. You are in the middle of the ocean, and you are swimming, and you don't know how far you can swim, but you know you are going the right direction. You need help. I mean, help not in a sense of like you need to work with other swimmers and other islands that you can find once in a while. You sometimes work with them and go with. That's how you do things. So I really appreciate that you guys are on those journey, and also Bonin supporting that, and also Courtney. Your own journey is slightly different, but that's also important. And Alchemist, obviously, being the bridge of everything that working together. So is awesome.
Wow, you guys are all geniuses. And this has definitely been better than Netflix. Not our speech giver, but watching Netflix. So let's have a big hand for this fantastic panel.